There is a technique that has been taught behind closed doors for over 3,000 years. It was carved into the walls of Egyptian mystery schools. It was encoded in Hermetic texts. It was practiced in silence by initiates who were sworn to secrecy, not because the technique was dangerous, but because it was so powerful that those who possessed it understood something the uninitiated couldn't accept. The impossible is not a category of reality. It's a category of belief. And this technique dissolves the boundary between them. Now, before you hear what this technique is, you need to understand something. This is not a visualization exercise. This is not an affirmation. This is not a journaling prompt or a gratitude list or a meditation you do for 10 minutes before bed. What I'm about to describe is a systematic restructuring of the way your consciousness interfaces with reality. It has 7 stages. Each stage builds on the one before it. Skip one, and the technique doesn't work. Complete all 7, and what happens next does not follow the rules of what you've been told is possible. In the tradition of the ancient mystery schools, knowledge was organized into degrees. Each degree represented a deeper level of understanding. The outer degrees, the 1st through the 10th, taught basic principles of mind, energy, and creation. The middle degrees refined those principles into practice. But the inner degrees, the highest levels, contained something different entirely. The 33rd degree was not the highest because it had the most information. It was the highest because it contained the one thing the other degrees were building toward, the technique for collapsing the distinction between imagination and reality. The method by which consciousness creates matter, not metaphorically, literally. That technique is what this video teaches. 7 stages. But I need to warn you about stage 4. Stage 4 is where the technique requires you to do something your rational mind will reject completely. It is the stage where most people quit, not because it's difficult, but because it feels wrong. It violates every instinct about how reality works, and it is the precise stage where the impossible begins to yield. Let's begin at the beginning. Stage 1 is called the selection, and it is the stage that determines whether the technique will work or fail before you've even begun. Stage 1. Choose the manifestation that your soul demands, not the one your ego prefers. Most people approach manifestation from the ego. They want the thing that will make them look successful, feel safe, or prove something to someone. A specific amount of money, a specific person, a specific title or achievement. And there's nothing inherently wrong with those desires. But the technique of the 33rd degree does not operate on ego desires. It operates on something deeper. The ancient texts called it the soul's imperative, the manifestation that isn't born from wanting, but from knowing. It's the thing you can't stop thinking about, not because you're chasing it, but because it won't stop calling you. The thing that, when you imagine your life without it, something deep inside you goes quiet in a way that feels like a form of death. Not dramatic death, just a slow dimming. A life that functions but never fully ignites. The selection is not about choosing what you want most. It's about identifying what is already choosing you. What is the reality that keeps knocking on the door of your consciousness regardless of whether you feel ready, qualified, or deserving? That is the manifestation this technique was designed for. Anything less, and the energy required for the remaining 6 stages will not sustain itself. The technique runs on the fuel of genuine calling, not casual desire. Take your time with this stage. Don't rush it. Most people already know what their soul's imperative is. They've just been afraid to admit it because it falls into the category of what they've been told is impossible. That's exactly why this technique exists. It was built for the impossible. Name it. That's stage 1. Stage 2 is the purification, and it's the stage most modern manifestation teaching skips entirely. which is why their results are inconsistent. Stage 2. Clear the contradictory signals before you transmit the new one. Imagine trying to broadcast a radio signal through a transmitter that's already sending 7 other signals on different frequencies. The signal you want to send gets distorted, fractured, lost in the noise. That is what happens when you attempt to manifest while your system is full of unresolved contradictions. The purification is about identifying and clearing the specific internal signals that will interfere with your manifestation. And these are not abstract. They are specific, identifiable, and almost always fall into 3 categories. The first category is inherited beliefs, the things you absorbed from your family, your culture, your early environment about what is and isn't possible. People like us don't get that. Money is hard to come by. You have to struggle to succeed. That kind of life isn't realistic. These aren't your beliefs. They're inherited code, and they're broadcasting on your frequency whether you're aware of them or not. The second category is emotional residue, past experiences of failure, rejection, humiliation, or loss that left an energetic charge in your system. Every time you approach the impossible thing, that charge activates. It floods your body with the feeling of the past failure, and your nervous system reads that feeling as a prediction about the future. The residue says, the last time you reached for something this big, you were destroyed, and your system contracts to protect you. The third category is identity conflict, the gap between who you currently believe yourself to be and who you would have to be for the impossible manifestation to exist in your life. If you believe you are fundamentally someone who struggles, then a reality of effortless abundance creates an identity crisis. Your system would rather keep the familiar identity than accept the manifestation that contradicts it. The purification is a deliberate process. For each category, you sit with the contradiction, and you bring it to consciousness. You write, the inherited belief that conflicts with my manifestation is, and you complete the sentence. You write, the emotional residue that activates when I imagine this reality is, and you name the feeling and the memory it's attached to. You write, the identity that would have to die for this to be real is, and you describe it with precision. You are not resolving these contradictions yet. You are naming them, bringing them from the unconscious into the conscious. Because a contradiction you can see is a contradiction you can release. A contradiction running beneath your awareness runs your life. This is stage 2. Purify the channel. Name every signal that contradicts what you're about to transmit. Because in stage 3, the transmission begins, and it needs a clear channel to travel through. Stage 3 is where the technique begins to separate from anything you've encountered in modern manifestation teaching. This is the stage the mystery schools called the imprint. And it's the stage where the impossible manifestation is encoded into the deepest layer of your being. Stage 3. Imprint the manifestation not into your mind, but into your nervous system. Make the impossible feel more real than your current reality. In standard manifestation, you visualize. You imagine the desired outcome in your mind. You see it. Maybe you add emotions. Maybe you make it vivid, and this engages the cognitive layer, the conscious mind, the imagination, the prefrontal cortex, and that's useful, but it's surface level encoding. The imprint goes beneath cognition entirely. It targets the nervous system directly, the body's felt sense of what is real. Because here's what the mystery schools understood that modern psychology is only beginning to confirm. Your nervous system does not distinguish between a vividly imagined experience and an actual one. When the imprint is deep enough, the body responds as though the reality already exists. Hormones shift, heart rate changes, muscle tension reorganizes. The electromagnetic field of the heart broadcasts a different signature. And that shift, that somatic shift, is what the universe responds to, not the mental picture, the body's conviction that the reality is already here. Here's how to perform the imprint. This is specific and precise. Do not improvise. Sit or lie down in total silence. Close your eyes. And instead of visualizing your manifestation from the outside, like watching a movie of your desired life, drop inside it. Don't see the reality. Inhabit it. Feel the chair you'd be sitting in. Feel the texture of the clothes you'd be wearing. Feel the temperature of the room. Feel the specific quality of relaxation or excitement or peace that would live in your chest if this reality were already your daily life. Don't narrate. Don't describe it to yourself in words. Words keep the experience in the cognitive layer. Drop beneath words into pure sensation. What does the impossible reality feel like in your hands, in your stomach, in your throat, in the space behind your eyes? Stay there, not for 30 seconds, not for 2 minutes. Stay in the full sensory immersion until your body does something involuntary. A deep exhale, a muscle twitch, tears forming, a wave of heat or tingling. That involuntary response is the signal that the imprint has reached the nervous system. It's the body saying, "I've registered this as real." That moment, that involuntary physical response, is the encoding point. Before it, you were imagining. After it, you were imprinting. And an imprinted reality broadcasts a signal that the universe cannot distinguish from an existing one. The imprint is performed once daily, ideally in the minutes between waking and full alertness, when the conscious mind is still thin and the subconscious is highly receptive. Over time, the imprint deepens. The involuntary responses come faster. The body begins to live as though the reality is already present, and the signal being broadcast into the field becomes indistinguishable from someone who already possesses what you're calling in. 3 stages complete. And now we arrive at stage 4, the stage the hook warned you about, the stage where most people stop, because what stage 4 asks you to do will feel like the opposite of everything that makes sense. Stage 4 is called the inversion. And what I'm about to describe is the reason the mystery schools required years of preparation before a student was permitted to attempt this technique. Because stage 4 requires you to do something that your entire psychological structure is designed to prevent. Stage 4. Act as though the manifestation has already occurred, before any evidence exists that it has. Not believe it will happen. Not hope it's on the way. Not affirm that it's coming. Live as though it is already finished, already complete, already real, in the total absence of proof. This sounds like delusion. Your rational mind is rejecting it right now, and that rejection is exactly why most people never manifest the impossible, because the impossible requires a relationship with reality that the rational mind categorizes as insanity. Here's what the mystery schools understood and what quantum physics has since pointed toward. Reality does not solidify and then get observed. Reality is observed and then solidifies. The act of observing, the act of treating something as real, is what causes it to crystallize from possibility into form. When you wait for evidence before you believe, you have the sequence backwards. You're waiting for reality to solidify before you observe it as real. But reality is waiting for your observation before it solidifies. The two are locked in a standoff, and neither moves until one goes first. The inversion is going first. It's treating the unseen as seen, the unfelt as felt, the unmanifested as manifested. It's collapsing the wave function through the sheer authority of your lived conviction, before the material world has caught up. This is what every great mystic, every visionary, every person who brought something impossible into being understood. They didn't believe because they saw evidence. They saw evidence because they believed first. The sequence was always inverted. Reality followed conviction. Conviction did not follow reality. In practice, the inversion is not about pretending. It's not about lying to yourself. It's about occupying the identity of the person for whom this manifestation is already a fact. Not a hope, not a goal, a fact. How does that person make decisions? They don't make decisions from lack. They don't weigh options from a position of, I don't have this yet. They make decisions the way someone makes decisions when the thing is already settled, with calm, with clarity, without desperation. How does that person carry themselves? Not with the tension of wanting, with the groundedness of having, not with the urgency of chasing, with the patience of someone who already possesses. How does that person respond to circumstances that seem to contradict the manifestation? They don't panic. They don't interpret contradictions as evidence that it's not working. They interpret contradictions the way a builder interprets scaffolding. Temporary structures that exist only during construction, irrelevant to the finished building. The inversion is living in the finished building while the scaffolding is still up, and it is the hardest thing a human being can do, because every sensory input, every rational thought, every piece of external evidence is screaming that the building doesn't exist yet, and you have to live there anyway. This is where people quit. Not because they don't understand the concept, because the gap between the inner reality they're holding and the outer reality they're seeing becomes unbearable. The cognitive dissonance peaks. The mind screams, "This is fantasy. This is self-deception. Look around you. Nothing has changed." And that scream, that desperate protest from the rational mind, is the exact moment the technique is working. The dissonance is not failure. It's the friction between the old reality and the new one attempting to emerge. It's the sound of one frequency being overwritten by another, and it is loudest right before the overwrite completes. The mystery schools called this the dark night of the technique, the period where everything inside you demands that you abandon the practice and return to reality. And the teaching was this: the initiate who can hold the inversion through the dark night, who can live in the unseen reality while the seen reality contradicts it, that initiate passes through a threshold that the quitter never reaches. And on the other side of that threshold, reality begins to reorganize. Stage 4 is the test. It's the stage that separates practitioners from philosophers. And once you pass through it, Stage 5 arrives to confirm that something has genuinely shifted. If you've held Stage 4, if you've lived in the inversion long enough for the dark night to pass, something begins to happen, and it's unmistakable. Stage 5, the evidence. Reality begins to send proof that the manifestation is assembling. This does not arrive as the manifestation itself. Not yet. It arrives as what the Hermetic tradition called correspondences, small, precise reflections of the larger reality that is forming. Think of them as fragments of the hologram appearing in your visible world before the full image resolves. You'll hear a phrase from a stranger that mirrors the exact reality you've been holding. A resource will appear that directly supports the next step. An opportunity will surface that makes no logical sense given your current circumstances, but makes perfect sense given the reality you've been imprinting. A conversation will happen that contains information you couldn't have accessed through any normal channel. These correspondences are not coincidences. They are confirmations. They are reality showing you its work in progress. The way an architect brings progress photos to a client, not the finished building, but evidence that construction is underway. There is a critical instruction for stage 5. Do not celebrate the evidence as though it is the manifestation, and do not panic if the evidence pauses. Celebrating too early pulls you out of the inversion. It snaps you back into the position of someone who is hoping and receiving confirmation, rather than someone for whom the reality is already complete. The moment you celebrate evidence, you've admitted it wasn't real yet, and that admission resets the signal. The correct response to evidence is quiet acknowledgement, a nod, an internal yes that carries no surprise, because the person living in the finished building is not surprised when someone mentions the building. It already exists for them. Evidence is not exciting. It's expected. Treat every correspondence with calm recognition. Of course, this is how reality looks when the manifestation is already complete. That response reinforces the inversion rather than collapsing it. Stage 6, the acceleration. Once evidence begins appearing, increase the intensity of the imprint. Stage 6 is mechanical, not mystical. When evidence begins to surface, it means the energetic blueprint of the manifestation has gained enough coherence to start interfacing with the material world. The construct is forming. And at this stage, more energy speeds the process. In practice, this means extending your daily imprint session. If you've been doing 10 minutes, move to 20. Deepen the sensory immersion. Add layers of detail. Make the felt sense of the reality so vivid, so textured, so neurologically complete that your body cannot distinguish between the imprinted reality and the one your eyes see when you open them. It also means bringing the inversion into more areas of your daily life. Make decisions from the completed reality in situations where you normally wouldn't. Small decisions first. What you wear, how you carry yourself, what you say yes and no to. Then larger decisions. Let the inverted identity handle more and more of your waking life. Stage 6 is the intensification stage. You are feeding the construct more energy, more detail, more lived conviction. You are collapsing the gap between the inner reality and the outer reality by making the inner reality more consuming, more detailed, and more inhabited than the outer reality that still temporarily surrounds you. And when that gap narrows to a critical threshold, when the inner reality becomes more neurologically real than the outer one, Stage 7 activates. The final stage, the one the mystery schools called the precipitation. Stage 7 has a name that comes from alchemy, precipitation. In chemistry, precipitation is the process by which a dissolved substance becomes solid. It's the moment the invisible becomes visible. The formless becomes form. What was distributed throughout a solution suddenly crystallizes into matter you can touch. Stage 7 is the precipitation of your manifestation from the energetic field into physical reality, and it has a specific mechanism that the mystery schools described with remarkable precision. Throughout stages 3 through 6, you've been building an energetic construct, an imprinted, neurologically encoded, identity-backed blueprint of a reality that doesn't yet exist in the material world. That construct exists in the field. It's real. It has coherence. It has detail. It has the energetic weight of lived conviction behind it. Precipitation occurs when the energetic weight of the construct exceeds the energetic weight of the current reality it's replacing. When the new reality becomes, inside your system, more real, more detailed, more inhabited, and more believed than the old reality. At that tipping point, the material world has no choice but to reorganize, because matter follows the dominant energetic pattern, always, without exception. Here's what happens when precipitation begins, and it's distinctive enough that you'll recognize it. First, the outer resistance peaks. Circumstances seem to intensify against the manifestation. Things that were stable start shifting. The last remnants of the old reality make a final stand. Relationships, situations, and structures that belong to the old pattern push back with unusual force. This is not a bad sign. This is the final sign. It's the old pattern breaking apart to make room for the new one. In alchemy, they called this the negredo, the blackening, the necessary destruction that precedes creation. Second, a gap appears, a pause, a strange stillness where nothing seems to be happening. The old is dissolving, the new hasn't landed. You're in the space between, the void, and in that void, the temptation to panic is enormous. Everything in you wants to fill the silence with action, worry, or doubt. Don't. The void is the crucible. The transformation is happening in the emptiness. Leave it alone. Third, and this is where it becomes undeniable, the manifestation begins to appear in physical form, not all at once. In a cascade, one element arrives, then another, then another, each one faster than the last. People, resources, opportunities, and circumstances begin assembling themselves around the blueprint you've been holding, not through your effort, through a coordination that exceeds anything you could have orchestrated. The cascade is the precipitation completing itself, and the experience of it is unmistakable. It doesn't feel like luck. It doesn't feel like coincidence. It feels like something that was always going to happen, because in the energetic field, it already had. The physical world was simply the last place it showed up. The final instruction of Stage 7 is the simplest and the most important. Let it land. Do not interfere with the precipitation. Do not try to control the form it takes. Do not rearrange the pieces as they arrive to match your mental picture more closely. The manifestation will arrive in the form that the energetic blueprint calls for, which may not look exactly like what your conscious mind imagined. It will look like what your nervous system imprinted, and the nervous system encoded the feeling of the reality, not the visual details. So the form may surprise you. The essence will not. Trust the form, even when it doesn't match the picture, because the intelligence that organized the precipitation is operating with information your conscious mind never had access to. It has found the optimal expression of the energetic blueprint you provided, and that optimal expression is, without exception, more complete, more satisfying, and more perfectly suited to who you actually are than anything your planning mind could have designed. Stage 7 is not something you do. It's something you allow. You've done the work in stages 1 through 6. Stage 7 is reality catching up. Your only job is to receive it without flinching. Let me give you the complete technique, beginning to end. Stage 1, the selection. Choose the manifestation your soul demands, not the one your ego prefers. Name the impossible thing that won't stop calling you. Stage 2, the purification. Clear the channel. Identify inherited beliefs, emotional residue, and identity conflicts that will interfere with the transmission. Stage 3, the imprint. Encode the manifestation into your nervous system through full-body sensory immersion, not visualization, inhabitation. Wait for the involuntary body response that confirms the imprint has reached the deepest layer. Stage 4, the inversion. Live as though the manifestation is already complete, before evidence, before proof, before the material world confirms it. Hold the inversion through the dark night, the period where everything demands you quit. Stage 5, the evidence. Reality sends correspondences, fragments of the forming reality. Acknowledge them without celebration. Treat them as expected, not exciting. Stage 6. The acceleration. Intensify the imprint. Extend the inversion into more areas of daily life. Feed the construct until it becomes more neurologically real than the current reality. Stage 7. The precipitation. The construct crystallizes into physical form. Resistance peaks, the void opens, and then the cascade begins. Let it land. Trust the form. Receive without flinching. This technique has been practiced for over 3,000 years. It has been called different things in different traditions. The great work in alchemy, the art of assumption in Neville Goddard's teaching, the act of creation in the Hermetic schools. The language changes. The 7 stages do not, because they follow the architecture of how consciousness interfaces with matter. And that architecture doesn't change with culture, language, or era. The impossible is not a boundary of reality. It's a boundary of identity. And this technique dissolves identity boundaries. That is what it was designed to do. That is what it has always done. And that is what it will do for you, if you complete all 7 stages without flinching. The mystery schools kept this behind closed doors because they understood that most people won't complete stage 4. They'll reach the dark night, feel the dissonance, and retreat to the comfort of the old reality. And that's their right. No one is obligated to manifest the impossible. But some of you watching this have been called to something that doesn't fit inside the boundaries of what's considered possible. Something that makes no logical sense. Something that the people around you would call delusional. And something deep inside you knows, has always known, that it's real, that it's yours, that it's waiting. This technique is how you go get it. Not by wishing, not by waiting, by becoming the person for whom it already exists, and letting reality catch up to the truth you've been holding. In the comments, tell me which stage you're in right now, not which stage sounds hardest. Which stage are you currently living in? Because identifying where you are in the 7-stage process tells you exactly what your next move is. Name it. Subscribe if you're ready for knowledge that goes beneath the surface of what most channels teach. And share this with the one person you know who's been called to something impossible and needs to know there's a technique for it. The impossible is waiting. It's always been waiting. Now you have the technique. Begin.